I disappear, it's because uh, my compile job killed Chrome. This
Nice.
happens all the time.
Really? Does that happen that often?
Yeah, I have this little what does a Nook stand for? This little like box that has one of those chips that I work on in it, and it has 32 gigs of RAM in it. And the target compiler is like really bad. The Cogent compiler, so it sucks up a ton of memory.
All right, we are live. I am about to pour my tea. So tell me,
That's
how's
not fair.
life?
I don't have any coffee. Let me make some coffee.
Sacrilege.
Life is okay. Life is good. I got the defense on the calendar, which is like should be in theory. Like I kept saying, oh yeah, as soon as that's calendared, I'm done. Uh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Talking to myself. Talking to myself. Is that better? Oh, sorry. The mic's not on my end.
I can
God
hear you
damn
from
it.
a
Okay, no
distance.
coffee. Yeah, I'm gonna sip this empty cup. Yeah. Let's pretend there's coffee in here. There's like a little bit of coffee there. I got I was saying it because I thought the mic was on the headphones, but it's on the webcam. I got the defense on the calendar, which I kept saying was going to be the point in which I declare victory. So I should probably declare victory now, but it
So,
hasn't happened yet. So
but okay, so like, I don't know, in math at least, it was like if your advisor agrees to schedule a defense for you, then they think you're going to pass. Is it that way with your advisor?
I feel like that's a universal thing, which is something I wish somebody told. I wish someone had told me this when I was an undergrad, that it's not actually a defense, it's a consensus,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's like a really formal word for, oh yeah, we're ready, you're ready.
Yeah, I imagine at one point,
Uh,
I imagine at one point it was. I heard a story about a mathematician who's, I think it was like, I forget exactly who it was, but this mathematician was like so like unmotivated to do their thesis, but they had like revolutionized several fields by the time while they were still like a grad student, right? They had like done all this like really amazing work, and so then, but he like kind of like refused. He's like, oh no, like I'm not ready to do my like actual dissertation or my defense or anything. I just need to like do more research and they finally got so concerned that what they did was they invited a bunch of mathematicians from other universities to come to and like they like cornered him in a hallway and they said like, oh, we have some questions on this like on this theory that like these visiting mathematicians have come to like think about this and we know that you know this really well, so come and help explain it to them. And he just like unwittingly did his thesis defense like without anyone telling him,
Interesting,
and then they all signed off on it and he got his PhD.
interesting. Who I thought that was Stephen Smale. You know who that guy is?
I know who that is, but I don't think that was it. I think I recall it being some kind of like Norwegian or like
No.
Scandinavian country. Um,
The story about Stephen Smales, he didn't give a shit until somebody threatened to kick him out, and then he graduated. It says he graduated from University of Chicago, actually. So I thought that was the story because that's one of those apocryphal tales of
no, this I thought
weird.
this was funny that they had to like trick him into doing his defense.
Yeah, I think I've heard that. I don't remember who it is either. I don't think I'm gonna fail, but at the same time, I'm in this weird position where like my advisors haven't a clue about what I do.
Hmm.
So I don't know they keep being like really reassuring. And I also have this problem that I have written 3 papers that all 3 got rejected, which is like serious. It's serious. It's not funny. It was funny the first one. It was still a little funny the second one. The third one, it was like, oh shit, now what do you like?
But so like
So
some departments are like, you have to publish this many papers in this tier of conference, and then you staple them together, and that's your thesis. And some of them say, your first and only publication is your dissertation. Like that's the only necessary publication. And
are
that
there
dissertation
are
is
there
like published in the university journal.
Are there departments that actually put that into like coda? Like you have to publish.
I think it's math departments a lot will be like you because like math departments are, more, I don't know. They don't do conferences, they only do journals, and like they
Mm.
kind of have like a different attitude towards publishing. Like so, like I know a lot of math PhDs, their only publication before they graduate is their dissertation.
Yeah. Uh, we don't have that in our department. I've never actually seen that, although somebody told me about some Spanish in Spain university that said the same thing. I have actually two publications from when I first started that were just like ridiculous. Like I did 20 hours of work and they were just like, sure, come on in. Everybody's the water's warm. Everybody can publish. There were these computer vision papers that were junk.
Uh,
Uh, yeah, and it gave me complete no, I didn't give me any distorted perception because I knew that they were junk and I knew that it was weird that
I'll tell you,
things
my
like that
my
got
most cited paper by far was like the least work required, and it's not a very good paper. But like by like a large, I've my most cited paper has 250 citations, and it was like a little workshop paper that was like not doing anything particularly sophisticated. And like now, as I understand where how the field has evolved, it's like they're like, oh, like this is not how you should do it. But it was like
uh,
at a time when the field was young and like there weren't very many papers, and so people were just like trying random things and seeing what happened, and then everyone now cites this as like an early work. Not everyone, clearly, but
do you
uh,
feel good about that? Do you get a kick out of that? Because like who gives I don't care
I don't
about
care.
sites.
I don't care. No, and I don't think I'm ever gonna go back to academia, so I don't think it matters. But it's nice to at least know how the publication game is played because now a lot of my work is trying to get PhD students interested in my in like doing my work
Oh,
for me at Google, right? Like so like I mean in that perspective, the having the carrot of a publication even like because like I want to like pay everybody. I want to just like spend Google's money on student researchers and interns and full timers, and Google's recently has just been like, no, we don't have money for that. So
sure.
yeah, but like having that and being like, okay, we're gonna publish and your name will be on it is like I'm trying to make that a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't claim to have figured it out. I wrote these papers. I went through like submission, rebuttal. So there was this one paper that I wrote that I snapped a pic from last time we were on with the like the blobs on it, the FPGA thing, routing thing.
Yeah.
I submitted that two times, and the first conference I submitted it to, there was no rebuttal phase. It was just like two, four, three against. It was some kind of like just unlucky break. And then the second conference I submitted to was on the margin, and there was a rebuttal phase, and I'm like, oh, this is fair. I can rebut. Although I'm being overly optimistic. I was much more cynical when the rebuttal phase was going on, and I'm like, all right, I'll write this rebuttal. I know it's not going to do anything, even though there were absurd like criticisms and critiques or whatever. And this is so weird, right? It was like two, four, and three against, but they were on the margin, so they let me rebut. And then I rebutted, and they all go to five. It was like five against.
Hmm.
How does like I gave you satisfying? I mean, they got mad. I guess they just got mad. They got pissy. Anyway, the defense is scheduled, and I feel okay about it. I don't think I'm gonna fail because who fails? Is another funny thing that I wish somebody told me as an undergrad. Nobody fails. You don't fail. That's unseemly. That's yeah, I don't know. So I feel okay about
That's good.
it. Yeah.
Are you ready to be done with grad school?
Oh my fucking god. That mathematician you were talking about just now must be the only person in the history of grad school that was like, I don't want to leave.
Yeah, I feel like there's like enough mathematicians. Like I think like Terry Tao is like this too, where there's like mathematicians who are just like so into the math that they can't like keep on track of a particular project that they're supposed to be doing. They're just like, oh, and then there's this math thing, and I'm gonna go do, and they like do some interesting work over there, but they never like, because I think in math you really have to do the thing that your advisor knows well, so
Yeah,
that they can evaluate the quality of your work, because otherwise it's just like too far distant. You know, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what it's like. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, but even given that, even if you're like scatterbrained, ADHD, pursuing all avenues, don't you prefer to be out from under somebody's like it's one thing, okay, I can't sit down and focus and write the thing, but anybody that's gotten that far and is really quote unquote passionate about the math is like, oh, I'm ready to be on my own and picking my own topics.
I feel like that there's like that joke that you get less and less freedom as you get more and more senior, like where it's like when you're a PhD student, like there's low enough expectations of you that you could just kind of think about whatever you want, and then you're a postdoc and
Hmm,
suddenly you
maybe.
are, a postdoc is kind of also pretty free, but like that, then as a postdoc you're like teaching a class or two, and then as an
Yeah.
assistant professor you are now you have to go to hiring committees and you have to be on all these
Yeah.
committees and deal with interdepartmental politics. And then as like a full professor, you get even more of that. And then suddenly you have no time to do research and you do it to all your students. And then finally you say, oh, well, now finally I can retire and then have time for research.
There was a guy I remember seeing some not obituary, but like they were retiring. I don't remember if it was at UF or somewhere like the school that I was at before here, but it was like this very like kindly send off where like congratulations. He was like I don't know. I want to say something silly like he was an ecology professor, and it was like congratulations. You now have time to do your quantum gravity work, which tracks. Which tracks. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Talk to me. So the thing is on April 5th, so there's still some things to be done. Talk to me on April 5th, and then I'll let you know how much I hate things or how excited I am or whatever. How about you? What's new in your life?
Oh man, let's see. I've been working a lot on my book. I have a New Year's resolution this year to work 40 hours on my book every month. Um, January wasn't so good. February I was 45 minutes short of my goal, and
You're
this month
timing
so
yourself.
I
You're
actually have a
actually keeping a
timesheet,
time.
yeah, and I think it's like, well, for the past like 2 years, I've been setting goals that are in terms of like number of chapters completed, or like, but for like
Mm,
the first year I was optimistic. I was like, all right, have a first draft of the book done by the end of the year. Second year I was like, oh, maybe finish whatever, 20 chapters. The chapters are all 5 pages. They're pretty short, so I was like, oh, I'll
sure.
finish like 20 chapters, and I got like five done, right? And so now I'm like, I see this as kind of like setting my standards even further back and just saying, well, I'm not going to get a certain amount done. I'm just going to put a certain amount of effort into doing it, and then whatever gets done will get done. And I think this is actually working really well for me because I can much more like I get depressed when I spend a lot of time working on like one chapter and I'm like, oh, I only wrote
Uh,
one chapter this month. What do I have to show for it? Even though it was like a really hard
uh,
chapter. And now it's like, okay, well, as long as I'm getting putting in the hours, like I know I'm doing what I can, and I'm not gonna like hold myself to achieve a particular impact, as they say. Um, but it's working well. I
I feel
had,
like.
hmm?
Go ahead. I was gonna say I feel like this is how I used to approach exercise. Where like I didn't have strength goals. I didn't have really like to go this fast, but I would head to the gym and I would just stay there. I wouldn't really time it, but I would just be like, all right, the work gets done, and I feel good.
Yeah, that's why I liked climbing at least because you kind of get like a natural, like just like the rating of the thing you're like more excited to climb harder routes and they're more interesting, and but
Yeah.
then they're also harder and you have
Yeah.
to get stronger to do it, but you just kind of
Yeah.
naturally. I
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, the I've been doing a bunch of interviews. Like I've been,
Yeah.
ever since I started the book, my standard of quality has like progressively gone up in terms of like what topics to put in and how thoroughly to research them. And so that's also part of why it's taking me longer and longer because I'll look back at some of my old chapters and be like, oh, I didn't do a very good job here, even though when I wrote it, I was like, this is great. So now like I'm doing like multiple interviews per chapter, and like I have all these tools for like crawling GitHub to look for people who are using the math topic somewhere and like trying to find like actual like things I can point to and say, oh, who's using this, who's using that, um, and trying to get a hold of like people at companies that would have no business talking to me, like okay, so like like the ELO chess score, right?
Mhm.
Like that rating mechanism. Apparently, Tinder used to use it to rate people's attractiveness and then used that in their like matching algorithm that said like, okay, two people, like if people who should we like show each other's profile, they should have a similar attractiveness score and they actually
How
used
long? How long?
Elo. That
How long
so
you been
the
married?
yeah, well I've been married for since 2015, so 8 years.
Because I was about. Yeah, yeah. So that's. You sound like that's news to you, but like everybody who's on Tinder knows that.
I mean, everyone on Tinder knows that like there's like weird algorithms, right? People just know, oh, there's
Well,
algorithms and the algorithms decide something. But I didn't know that they were actually using Elo. And then there was a point at which claim they stopped using Elo. But there's all these articles still like, oh, like how to increase your Tinder
uh,
Elo, whatever. And I'm like, okay, like I really have to find someone at Tinder to talk to about this, and it's just been like a
uh,
crapshoot and getting no response. Because of course, why would they, right? Why would they talk to me about that? Like it's too how the Tinder algorithm works is too closely guarded of a
yeah,
secret to share to a random dude writing about math. Uh, but
yeah. But you know who you might be able to get on the phone is the guy that sold OK Cupid to them, who used to be
oh,
who was a math major,
okay, that's a good idea.
and he's
Um,
like I don't know what he does, but he used to have a very he used to have a very mathy blog.
I actually remember that he was like a math guy, but I have to. Yeah, okay, I'll look into that later. But yeah, so I've been like there's a bunch of like I talked to a guy today and he worked on this tool that will basically it's like a really fantastic claim. The claim is that they can just by looking at the weights of a neural network, they can estimate the training accuracy without seeing the data, without seeing the
That
labels or
sounds
doesn't it sound crazy, right? But like there's like multiple nature papers about this topic. Like it's like all and there's this whole like it goes down to they did some theory work about like why does deep learning work kind of thing. And then they the artifact that came out of that was some statistical measures you can take just on the and they evaluated like thousands of neural networks at this point, like different architectures, different hyperparameters, all these things, and they're like, it's not like perfect, but it correlates well. And I think it's like they're treating it like a signal, like, okay, if this metric looks bad, then that means something about your neural network is ill conditioned. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but like you can use it to spot some problems, right? And apparently there have been like people like in like very far-flung reaches of the world using this for all kinds of crazy problems like he told me that there's someone in New Zealand that's using it to from satellite images estimate the number of trees on a property and use that for carbon credit assignment, and like they're using that to like fine tune their
oh,
convolutional neural network, right, to like for estimating that problem. And it's like, okay, I'd love to like go talk to that person, right? Like I'm like reaching further and further afield. Yeah, there's one person I talked to that was doing some like game theoretic. It's like a mix of game theory and reinforcement learning for telling for informing or scheduling wildlife like anti-poaching patrols in wildlife preserves all around the world. And she literally like goes into the bush in Uganda or whatever while they're on patrol with them and they pull up, okay, here's where the algorithm told you to go and let's go there and see if it makes any sense. And it will be like on a hill with really steep like bush you can't get through it really and they're like there's no way there's poachers here because no one can get through here, and she's like okay I gotta go fix my algorithm, right? Like
it's like it's like that episode of the it's like the episode of The Office where Michael drives into the lake because
exactly,
he was
but
following he's following Google Maps, right?
yeah, but it's like yeah, so it's like I'm just getting yeah further and further like away from just like core computer science, which has been really fun and exciting. But then now I look back at the stuff where it's like oh like using hashing to estimate the size of a data stream with sublinear time out, and it's like that's fucking boring. Who cares about that?
So it's fun. It's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I might be like what's the word? Not counterculture exactly. I don't know. I want to say like stick in the mud. I don't think the ML stuff is very compelling as a use case of mathematics because it's just like you can
I
just
agree.
dream it up
I agree.
And
I
like,
agree. And that's why I'm mostly staying away from neural networks. The one about the guy who's like estimating training quality, that one is basically you look at the eigenvalues of the weight matrices in each layer, and you look at the distribution of eigenvalues and like fit it to a particular
sure,
curve. And so, okay, that's like not actually saying much about the neural networks themselves, right? It's not just like come up with a weird architecture. It's not really math. It's just like inspiration from biology or whatever. But this guy's like, oh, we're actually going to do like spectral analysis of some matrices. It's like, okay, I can see
sure,
that as like an application of
sure.
math. And then the other one was like there was like a game theory aspect to it that I think has a good story. I still haven't finished that draft yet, but yeah. And then what else? I'm talking to a bunch of people doing like content recommendation at Spotify next week. Yeah, it's been I did one on like abuse detection at YouTube, which was really cool. Um, we'll see if Google lets me publish that one because that one's got like it's like on the edge of telling too much about YouTube's secret sauce for anti-abuse.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I've been working on a couple of patches, PRs, and this manager messages me today. I'm like fixing stuff that is, like core stuff. So I have to look at the architecture diagrams for this chips and these chips, and the guy's like, "Oh, let me ask you an annoying question. Is this stuff publicized out in the?" And I'm like fixing like just like kind of like embarrassing issues, and he's like, "Well," basically implying that maybe I shouldn't be discussing or documenting the stuff that is stuff that is in the architecture spec that isn't out in the open.
Hmm.
Kind of along the same lines of what you're saying with the YouTube like filtering thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I didn't. I might be skirting the issue where I'm like saying, I'm like leaving like breadcrumbs, like checking the architecture spec under this section to verify. But if you don't have the architecture spec, it's just a subject. It's just a subheading, right? It's like 3.2.11, right?
Hmm.
So that's definitely a thing that's not public, right? But I'm also not saying what's in that section. I'm saying you can check there.
Yeah, I got people. I did one chapter that was about how it is a Google specific thing again about how they do like culprit finding. So they have like they don't do tests on every single change that goes into the Google code base because it's too big and there's too much. So they will just checkpoint things, and then when there's a failure in between two checkpoints, they do effectively git bisect to find the breakage. But the problem with git bisect is that the tests are flaky. Like Google has so many tests that like you're always going to
Sure,
run into
sure.
flaky tests. So they figure out, okay, like how can we do that more effectively if we know that there's a small chance that things can be flaky and we have estimates of how flaky tests are. Like how can we improve git bisect? And I ended up like having to use the names of Google's internal systems, right? That are some of which are public to some more or less degree. Like people at Google just like talk about these code names publicly all the time, right? Like Piper, you might have heard, and Code Search and Forge and Tap and all these like systems.
Board.
And Borg, yeah, and some of these have white papers associated with them, but the ones that I was
Yeah.
discussing didn't. But I found like a bunch of talks where like Googlers were just like giving public talks about the systems and like describing them in some detail. But like some reviewer was looking at it and was like, oh, this is not public name, so you can't put it in the book. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it's first of all, it's just a name, right? Like the name Forge is like not interesting or trade secret in any way. And then I put it into like three different public talks where people are name dropping it left and right. So I was like, okay, but yeah, it's like the same
If,
sort of
if,
thing where it's like this is not like Google's core ranking algorithms or anything. It's not a trade secret. It's just a name.
is this person like a lawyer, accountant, bean counter?
No, this person was the person who worked on the system that I was writing about. And he was like telling me that I shouldn't put that kind of stuff. And like I also like one other thing I put in there was kind of like he told me about some speculation of things they want to do in the future with this. And he was like, you can't talk about things that I told you I want to do in the future. And I was like, okay. Like that can't be that bad.
Some people are sticks in the mud.
Hmm. Yeah. Or
What
maybe
else
some
can you
people are
say?
afraid if because his name was in it, right? It was like about him and his like story. So like if his name's in it and then like someone gets mad at him, like maybe he's worried about getting fired or something. Um,
Yeah. Whatever. That's the typical excuse. That's like, I'm gonna get canceled for this shit. It's the same thing that the Nazi foot soldiers said. I'm just afraid of. Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, so
So,
lots of book stuff, and then otherwise I've just been like a handyman. I've been like doing house maintenance projects, house
oh,
fixing
bro,
projects.
I've told you I'm envious of this. If I had a house, not that you have a house, but like, I, yeah,
You're envious
would
of
it be?
fixing things around the house. I had to stretch carpet the other day and figure out how to do
Oh,
that.
I've done that. Holy shit, I've done that.
Yeah,
Did you fuck up your knee?
I
Did that
did.
hurt?
My knees was bleeding.
Yeah, bro. I had a what my brother and I um, fondly recall as the Great Flood of 2008. I
Mm.
like it's 2008. It's a long fucking time ago. This was like when I was in community college before I started university. We were living together in Tallahassee, and I took pardon my French. I took a dump that was too big and flooded the toilet, and then like went back to sleep, just like in the middle of the night, and woke up, and then like standing 3 inches of water in my apartment, in this apartment, this like college apartment. And I don't know why. I don't know why this was the impulse that we had. Like the natural thing is like call the landlord and be like, we fucked up. My brother and I were like, no, let's go to Home Depot and very quickly recarpet the entire apartment. And she will never notice. She will never notice. That was like that was the
Mm.
mindset. She will never notice that we did, and it will be somehow cheaper, right? Like this wasn't like a for funsies thing. It was like we will save money. We will come out on top. The carpet is cheaper from Home Depot than she will charge us. And so we went and did this. We had never done this, and this was 2008. YouTube was around, but we did not YouTube this. I
Yeah,
think we
you
just
you
went to
wouldn't you wouldn't have that many videos
yeah
explaining
yeah.
that stuff.
So we went and bought carpet. We went and bought that thing that you smash with your knee to stretch the carpet.
Yeah, yeah.
We bought the tacks to hammer
Tack
into the
strip.
ground.
Yep.
Yeah, all that, and then we recarpeted the apartment. And it was like okay, it was like I'm not that's a real trade, right? Like you go to trade school or
Hmm.
something, or you're an apprentice for that, right? So it was like a little bit loose, and it wasn't taught, and it took us like 20 hours, and we passed out afterwards. And then I remember she comes to get like to do an inspection like 6 months later when the lease was up, and the carpet was like a slightly different color, but it was noticeable. And
Mm.
she was like, "Did you guys did you recarpet the apartment?" And I just like I had anticipated this. I'm dead in the face. No, why would I ever do that? And that's it. And then I mean, like she didn't. She must have known
Yeah,
and been really confused, but she didn't charge us any more money for it.
that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's lucky.
How much did how much did you stretch? How much did you like a
It
room?
was our basement. Yeah, we had some water damage, and we paid people to put in like a sump pump and all that stuff. And then the only thing they didn't do was paint and put the carpet back. So last weekend I painted, or 2 weekends ago I painted. Last weekend I stretched the carpet. Uh, yeah,
How did it
and
come
then
out?
oh, it's fine. Yeah, there's a little part of it that, like, because it was already there, right? They pulled up the carpet and they were just putting it back. So it was already cut to size, but then there's one small part that, like,
Uh,
doesn't seem to stretch all the way to, like, tuck snugly under the baseboard, but it's
yeah.
fine. We're probably going to end up replacing the carpet with, like, a new carpet because there's enough water stains that haven't come out. I also did the, like, whole
Uh,
rug doctor thing and all that. And there's enough water stains that, like, are still there that it's like, okay, maybe in a few years we'll actually properly replace this and uh, yeah. So
have there been any improvements in rug stretching technology since 2008, or it's just
it's
smashed the
still the
thing with
knee
your knee?
kicker, but they have like professional ones that are about as cheap as the knee kicker that you can rent. That it's like $700 to buy new, but it will stretch across the entire room, and then you actually like clamp it to the carpet, and then you just like ratchet it, and it will keep pushing like push against the opposite wall, and then it will stretch the carpet like as taut as can go.
It's like a really
It's
long.
a huge pole. It's a huge telescoping pole that will go across a 12-foot, 15-foot room or something. And it's just used to give a lot of tension on the carpet. And there's other ones that aren't like super long, but those are even more expensive. They're like these boxes and yeah, it's a
But
whole
you didn't
thing.
use that.
No, I
But
just
you didn't use that.
because there was a
Yeah.
small enough section of carpet. I mean, it took me like 2 hours to do it,
No.
which because it was my first time doing it and I didn't quite know what I was doing, and And the basement floor is concrete, so it was like really hard to get the nails in to like
Yeah,
get the tack strip in.
so
Yeah.
the rest of the basement is wood. The texture. So like some of it is in concrete and some of it is in wood,
No,
or
no,
what?
it's all concrete, but I just had to replace some of the tack strip, and it,
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, it's like I don't know, you have to really, really hit those nails to get them to go into concrete.
Yeah, you can fuck it up. I remember that we would like take turns smashing it and laughing at the fact that it chipped away instead of sunk into the like actually
Yeah.
embedded. And we're like, smash, miss.
Yeah,
Fuck.
but that's done now. Now I have another room that I need to paint because this room is gonna be. I have a baby coming on in early June.
Oh shit, bro.
Yeah,
Congrats.
and so this room is gonna be the baby room, and I need to vacate. And I got two like big old standing desks that I'm gonna put in like an L shape in a corner of this room. And it used to be like a guest bedroom, so now I'm like redoing it into my office. And so and it's this ugly brown color on the wall, and I'm gonna paint it, uh, and then assemble all my desks and move everything down there.
Yeah, I say that I'm envious of like whatever, like some like creative, productive activity that lets you blow off steam, essentially. But that is like painting things that are already painted but are just a not nice color. I would never do
Yeah. It's like a really ugly brown color. I don't know who would want to paint this color brown. Uh, and yeah. But yeah, I also have been like lots of like random little things. Like I was like annoyed at my 3-year-old, and so I was just like, I'm gonna go into the workshop, into my garage, which is a wood shop, and I'm gonna like just like do stuff in there, and I need some alone time. And that's like
that.
my yeah.
From the 3-year-old.
From the 3-year-old, yeah, and he kind of gets it now. It's funny because he will sometimes be like, "I just want to be alone, Dada," and then he'll like just go sit in his room by himself when he's like pissed off. And it doesn't happen that
Smart. It's
often, but
good.
when it does happen, it's really nice. But now he kind of gets it that like,
Okay.
okay, if someone says they want some alone time, you just have to leave them alone for a while. And I've been having him just like play while I'm in the wood shop working on stuff, and he'll just like hang out in there and like wave sticks around and whatnot. But yeah, and then I was just like piddling around with some leftover plywood, and I made this game. Um, it's called oh God, what is it called? Let me pull up a picture.
Cones of Dunshire.
No, no, it's not. It's not complicated, which is why I was able to make it myself. Where is it? I kind of yeah. Okay, so it's called Shobu. So let me see if I
Board
can.
game. Yeah.
Yeah,
Board
board game
game.
called Shobu. And so it's like there's like four small 4x4 boards, and then you have white and black pebbles on them. And it's kind of like a mix of chess and Go, or I don't know. It's not really like Go, but it's just like in the same sort of like abstract like logic game.
Mm.
But you just have to make these four little boards, put the 4x4 grid in them, and get some stones. And so I was like, I could do that. So I had like a bunch of plywood just, and I think the reason I thought of this because I was at a board game store and I was looking at the price of this thing, and I was like, it's just four pieces of wood and and some stones. Like
It's a,
this shouldn't be that expensive, right? And then I was like, and so then I went in the shop and I was like, oh, okay, I actually have enough spare plywood just lying around that I can make this, and so I made it, and now I don't have anyone to play it with, but I had it it looks kind of nice. I went to like a arts supply store and I got some like nice little like white pebbles and black pebbles, and now I need to actually find someone who wants to play it with me.
no, no. You know what you should do? You should go sell it at the board game store for an obscenely high price.
Did I tell you I made a different board game? Or I made a
No.
card game called well, let me get the link. I didn't make it so much as I like redesigned an existing game and then I made the graphics for it. The game is called Socks, um, and it's based on a math problem. Uh, but It's expensive because it's one of these like print on demand
Oh shit,
companies.
this is yours.
This
This
is
is
mine.
your
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Okay.
I made this game. Yeah, and the way the game works is you can scroll down to the picture there, but it's I should
Like
really
you can't flip it.
hold on.
There's only one image.
There's
Who
only one
reviewed
image.
this? One of your friends? Who's this person?
Did
Kathy
someone
Yoon.
review it? Oh yeah, she's my friend. She told me about this game. And so I was like, here, let me get this up here. So I was just like, she was on my team at Google and then she left for Apple, but she told me about this game that like her friend had like a copy and they were just like they ended up like trying to so okay, the way the game works is you have each the deck of cards, each there's a unique subset of so there's six sock types, right? And each card has a distinct possible subset of each of the six. So there's two of the six minus one cards, and you lay out some cards, and then it's a race to determine if you can find a subset of cards where all of the types of socks match up in pairs. Um, so basically,
Okay.
if you can find like four cards where all of there's two orange socks and four green socks and two light blue
Sure.
socks and two pink socks or whatever, or zero of some, then you collect that as like a set and then you deal out some more cards and you keep going. So it's kind of like the game Set if you've heard of that game, but like a different like concept. And so
I
so
feel like I've
she told me this math problem and she was like, oh, like we were thinking about like, okay, what's the minimum number of cards you need to lay out to guarantee that you find a set? And then they'd stop playing the game and they were just doing a math problem on paper for a while. And so she like asked me like, oh, you're a math guy. Do you know how to solve this problem? And I figured it out. And then I like read about the history of this math problem. There's like a long, you know, depending on what version of the problem, like how you want to generalize it. There's like all these papers about it. And then I was like, and I looked. The original copy of the game that she had was like not for sale anymore. Like it was out of print, and the company that made it, it wasn't a company. It turns out it was just like a math professor at some liberal arts college who like made this and like made a website for it, and then the website was down, and then you couldn't buy it anymore. So I was like, all right, so I'll just make it. And I got in contact with the professor, and she was like, yeah, it's fine if you sell it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I made it, and I made the graphics and everything, and then I was like, and so now I have this game, and I've given it to some people as like little gifts. Um, but it's pretty
her
fun.
being her being one of her being one of them.
Her being one of them. Yeah. 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 A huge hit. Yeah, I didn't see that she
Yeah.
left a review on it.
No,
Uh,
huge hit.
but yeah, I had to tweak the rules a little bit too because the original rules were I think not as fun. It was just slightly different from
The
those
rule
rules.
the rule you just described to me is not in the set of original rules.
Yeah, the original rule was something like you can only find it among a set of three cards. Like it has to be a set of exactly
Oh,
three cards that have this property. And so in this one, the minimum number of cards you need to guarantee a set is six. Once you deal six cards, there's always a set somewhere. And in that game, I think it was like 12 or 25 cards you needed to deal to guarantee there was a set of exactly size three that had this property. And so I was like, screw that. Like, that's a little bit more difficult. You might run into some cases where you just can't find your set and give up.
six is the minimum number.
Yeah,
Then this picture I'm looking at has
it has a set.
a
Yeah, yeah,
subset with magic.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
let's
that's
see if we
why.
can find it.
What?
Let's see. Okay, I think I found it. Yeah, I found it.
What is it?
So it's the top right corner, those three in the top right corner.
The top right corner, the one with four socks, the card with four
Yeah,
socks.
so
What I'm
that
looking
one
at.
and then the one to its left and below it, those all have, except
Oh,
for
sorry,
pink,
it's
there's
not.
a
Yeah, yeah,
pair.
yeah.
There's two of each type except for pink.
What?
Yeah, so there's so in the top three, the middle
Oh, the top.
top right,
Except for
and
me.
no, and bottom right. So those three cards, there's two oranges, two dark blues, two light blues, two
Okay,
greens, and two
sorry. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yellows.
Sorry.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
bottom right. I was looking in
Bottom
the
right.
middle. I was looking with it. Yeah, yeah. I was looking at the bottom middle.
Yeah. But yeah, so and there's like a two-line proof that six is always enough. And then if you start getting into, you know, Yeah, there's like all this math. I wrote a whole blog post about it when I published the game.
Is it the pigeonhole principle?
You can do it with pigeonhole principle. You can also do it with just like vector space dimension, um, because you have like each sock by itself is like one dimension of a vector space, and you have six socks, so this is a six-dimensional vector space. And so
Hmm.
a set is a linear combination that sums to
Oh, and
zero.
then yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
you're saying, what's the yeah? Um,
Linear
Sorry, no,
dependence.
sorry, it's not six then, it's seven, right? Because once you have seven cards, then then you're guaranteed to have a linear
Sure,
dependence
sure,
among some subset. So
sure.
it's seven, it's not
Yeah,
six. I misstated it, but six.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Well, I mean, sorry. Oh, sorry. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So seven. Yeah, yeah, gotcha.
but yeah,
That doesn't make first.
there's a that one doesn't generalize because that one only works for vector spaces, and you can generalize this game in with non-vector space like model real algebras that still make it into a game, but then don't have as clean of an answer as to how many cards you need. Um, so yeah, but that was fun. So I'm like I guess I make card games now, but I've made this game and it's much easier. I could buy like a bunch in bulk at like really cheap compared to the like $25 or whatever. It's like I think it's like $25 and I get a $5 cut or something.
A penny.
So
That's
and but then if I buy it in bulk, I can buy like 100
of
copies or
course,
whatever
of
for like
course.
much cheaper. And so I was thinking, I was like, okay, there's a bunch of board game stores in the area. Like, should I do that? Should I just like print a bunch of copies of my math
Have
game
a
and try and
second.
get board game stores to
Have a
sell it?
side. Have a side hustle.
I mean, it wouldn't be much of a side hustle, but they could sell it for
Yeah.
like $10 or something, and I print it for $5, and then I could get a whatever $2.50 cut, and they get a $2.50 cut. I don't know how large scale, but
I don't think I don't yeah I don't know how much larger the cut is if you bring them an already printed. But this is like how my wife has this her own side hustle of this sort where she makes like she'll like do graphic design and put it up on this website that'll print shirts and stickers and whatever on demand.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I
And
don't
they're
know
all
about your wife's designs in particular, but I know of
sure
that concept.
concept, right? And she's always very very proud of it when she gets a sale, and she's made like 20 bucks out of it. And it's the same exact thing where like I kind of like needle her with it, where like she made 20 bucks, but the site has made 100 bucks.
Really? Oh man,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta see.
exactly,
Yeah, I gotta
exactly.
see how much I've had because I never look at this page. And okay,
It's
so
Kathy, just Kathy.
yeah, just Kathy. No, yeah, no one's bought it this year, but it looks like some people bought it around when I announced it, and then around Christmas time. Yeah, not too many sales. That's okay. Like
You
15.
disappointed?
No, I didn't think it would sell like hotcakes, but I did think it was just kind of it was fun to like do the graphic design and like be all silly
Sorry,
about.
did you say 15?
Yeah, it looked like there were about 15 sales. So
It's
I
pretty good.
made whatever, 15 times $5.
I can't do that math.
Yeah. No one can.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so it's like, yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of like taking math problems and turning them into like card games and board games because I feel like it's such an easy and rich source of inspiration. Like my toddler at his preschool was playing a game. They sent us like pictures of them playing it, and it was a game that was like if you just took the idea of uh, uh, and choose three and tried to make it into a game, this would be that game. And it was like perfect for 3-year-olds because it was like they would like pick three objects, right? And it would be like whatever sunglasses or it'd be like colors. It was like purple, green, and red or whatever. And then there was a grid of cards where there were different like gnome characters and they were each wearing different colored hats, shirts, and pants. And then based on the three things you did, you had to hunt to find the one that was wearing the three colors that got selected, right? And
Sure.
so, yeah, and so it's just that's like the simplest possible. I guess it's not and choose three, but it's like because there were some that had like purple hat and purple shirt. So it'd be like even stupider, right? Just like power set of three, right? Or like
I
three to the power
do you
n,
think
right? It's like the
do
simplest,
you
but
do
then
you,
it's like this is like a popular game for little kids, right? Like, come on, there's got
well,
to be so
yeah,
many
but
like simple math concepts you can just turn into games.
yeah, but I think you said you hit on the keyword like for little kids. I think that you could give a 3-year-old, your toddler, anything with colors. I
That's
don't think it would
true.
have to be mathematically principled.
But that's how you sell it, right? Because then people think that it's
Sure,
like
sure,
developing some
sure,
mathematical skill. And like socks, I
sure.
had a whole I took it to like a math department party. My wife teaches math at community college, and so they had like a party, and I brought the game, and then like all these like math teachers were just like sitting around the table for 30 minutes staring at socks, like, trying to find like they thought it was fun.
That, yeah,
So like the
yeah.
harder the
I mean,
math
I
problem,
get.
the more grown up the target audience.
I feel like there has to be I mean, I don't play board games or card games. I feel like there needs to be a compelling for me to engage with some kind of content like that. It's much more than I don't know. I don't like math. I did math. I do a lot of math, right? Something you could say something like that. But the story, like, what was the last board game I played? I played some goofy ass game where the goal of the game is to disguise yourself as a criminal versus a police officer. It's just kind of like, and then you tell lies,
Was that like
and the
Secret
person that is
Hitler? Was that it?
something like that, where like nobody can tell that you're the thief, and they
Yeah,
have to
yeah, yeah,
discover that you're the thief, and you win if you make it to the last round without them fingering like pointing you out as
yeah,
the thief. And so rather than the actual intellectual challenge is like the theatrics of it and
yeah.
like keeping a straight face and playing jokes on people
I do like those
as
games.
as an adult, right?
Yeah. I've kind of outgrown those games just because I played them so much like when I was a grad student and stuff. Like,
No,
yeah. But I do
yeah, I'm
love
about that.
there's so many of them of that style now. But yeah, there's another game, there's like a math game. It's not a math, it is a math game, but it's like it's not explicitly presented as a math game called Hanabi. And it's like the concept is that you have these like fireworks at different colors, and you're trying to place them down to in like a solitaire style to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order. And but the catch is that your hand, you don't see it, you put it on your forehead, and everyone else can see it, but you still have to play from your hand into without knowing exactly what you're playing. And then the core concept of the game is that people can give a restricted type of information to other players to tell them what's in their hand basically, so that they can get enough
Hmm.
information to single down that like this card is safe to play.
Sure.
And that one's fun because it's like a generalization of this math, this like logic puzzles that are really common in math called like
The gnomes,
the hats, the
the hats, yeah,
like,
the hats, yeah,
yeah, there's the what wearing red hat or blue hat, or
yeah.
wearing infinitely many hats, or whatever. But like it's like that a card game version of that problem. And so every time I find one of these games, I love it, and I'm just like, oh, I want to like uh make some of my own.
You want to hear a piece of funny trivia? Um, I'm really familiar with those. I haven't done it in a while, but I'm really familiar with those hat logic puzzles
Oh yeah.
because if you pull up this if you want to like study for quantitative finance, if you want to go into quantitative finance, the interview process, I guess it used to be at some point, it's probably much closer to like leak code type stuff now. But at least when I was trying to break into this in 2015, and you can still find the books, like there are these puzzles. They give people puzzles,
Mm,
like brain teaser, exactly like the
yeah.
original style of Google brain teasers, I guess.
Hmm.
But you can get like, some of them are probability games, some of them are logic puzzles, some of them are just straight up stupid brain teasers, like
Hmm.
can the manhole cover thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are are the hat the no the hat game. There are there are a couple of these books that you can pull up that are quantitative finance interview prep books, and you'll find like 15 versions of the hat game, the
Wow.
gnome hat game, the prisoner hat game,
Yeah.
the this guy got hung on this day and he revealed this thing to
Hmm.
everyone. Yeah. So I did like 15 of those when I was prepping for night.
Yeah, I don't particularly find those to be all that fun,
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, it's because it's been done so much in the math community. Like like when I was a grad student, we would go to conferences, and then like in the evenings, after all the talks, and we're after dinner's over and we're just sitting around chatting, it always would turn to like, okay, what's your favorite math puzzle? And then
Really?
People would come up with all these like different, yeah. So I've heard so many, and there's so many variations on the the hat puzzle, and like people always try to come up with the like craziest possible version of the hat puzzle, the one that's like solvable, but like just you have to assume the Riemann hypothesis or whatever to to get there. So funny.
Sorry, not an actual hat puzzle. You're saying some.
Yeah, well, so like they'll do like okay, instead of like there's like they'll say okay, there's an infinite number of people wearing red or blue hats, and there's a version of like an infinite amount of like one piece of thing that you can say, and then can you save all but a finite
Oh,
number of the people from getting executed? Or there'll be one where it's like, oh, there's a function from the real numbers to hats, and and in order to like solve the hat puzzle, you
gotcha.
need to construct a non-measurable set. Like they just like go wilder and wilder.
It just happened multiple. uh,
It's
yeah.
at some point it gets obnoxious, right? Like,
What? I wanted to say something like that's obnoxious, but I didn't want to
yeah,
insult
yeah, it is. But like, if you're sitting around a bunch of math people, you have to kind of like roll with it. Yeah,
you.
because they don't know when it's obnoxious. It's cool that everyone the first time they hear it, right? And then yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key to not being obnoxious is knowing when something has been beaten
Hmm.
to the point of being a dead horse.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's fundamental to being a math major, or like maybe like just a PhD pursuer that you don't know when that has happened, and so you just keep ratcheting up like the abstraction dimension or the tedious dimension or something. You're like, I don't like I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna get there. It's gonna be finally interesting if I just change this feature of it.
Someday it'll finally be interesting.
Exactly. So what do you want to do with these things? Like I didn't mean to give you the impression that I didn't want to do like I am burnt out, but I didn't want to give the impression like I'll be eventually unburnt out, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
maybe
and
we
well,
should
I
spend
didn't want to like sap your, uh, patience with me if we spent
no, come on.
how many weeks on Python bindings in Bazel, right? Like that's just not manageable. Um, and we're not getting anybody coming into like because I remember you said the original idea was you wanted it to like people could come in and chit chat about compilers or ask questions or whatever, and we are nowhere near having anybody engaging with us.
We
Uh,
could. I mean,
I
we
mean,
don't advertise this.
right. I mean, we could, well, I put it on my, every time we start streaming, I put
Oh,
it on my
shit.
thing, and I've got, I don't know, some number of followers on YouTube that presumably get something showing up in their feed whenever I go live. Like we've had 5 people watch this stream for a minute or so at a time. Uh, but I feel like there's maybe like, you know, if it's not if you want to lean more into the like get other people involved in chatting about compilers, then like maybe we could like have someone sign up for a time slot and then like they could join us in the video call and chit chat with us about compilers and ask compiler questions, and have something be more like deliberate, uh, rather than just us working on whatever we feel like working on. I'm happy kind of either way. Um,
I don't
you
I don't
know,
have I don't have very I mean
I don't know who I would ask, right? Like maybe you'd put something on the LVM or MLIR discourse and be
Discord.
like, "Hey, we're doing
Yeah,
this," and
Discord.
and but like
Y-
presumably everyone there knows as much or more than we do
Wow.
about. No.
No, I mean the intent was weirdly altruistic for like students and stuff like this
Hmm.
to be able to ask questions. Like there, I remember was it in the summer? There was some woman that reached out to me that was like you find a lot of students that are saddled with compilers research because they sign up for like an RU style experience,
Mm.
and the professor who's like clueless about how far the field has advanced since they were hands on keyboards hacking,
Uh,
or is just clueless about like the gulf between their abilities and given their amount of experience and the kids. And it's like you have these kids that just like wander into an enormous morass of bullshit And some of them reach out once in a while. Like I had this woman that reached out to me, and she's like, because I'm active in the Discord, so I try to be helpful and
Mm.
do this thing. And she's like, "Oh, can I get some help?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'll help you. I'll try to help you." She was like in Algeria or something like that, and she was working with this guy at Ecole, whatever the fuck, right? Because that's the pipeline, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or something. Anyway, and she was just like trying really hard, and God bless her, having no supervision, trying to get MLIR to work, right? Which is this enormously intimidating, complex thing that you
Mm-hmm.
need 16,000 core servers to compile at a quick enough pace that you're not getting stuck, this kind of stuff. And she had like a 4-core laptop. I'm being very like, I don't think this is true, but it's like her whole village like saved up to buy the laptop. Anyway, there are a lot of barriers. All I'm saying is that there
Yeah.
are a lot of barriers, and they're fairly unnecessary. Very few of the things that are core MLIR stuff things are like deep mathematical concepts that you need to study, and a lot of them are just, oh, I don't know the jargon. Oh, I can't compile CMake. Oh, I can't compile Bazel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't understand templates because templates are, everybody hates templates, and we just got all accustomed to them after 10 years. And like, so to help those people, I was like, well, if I know anything, I know how to do that. I know how to be like, well, don't pay attention to the template. It's just this thing. Or here's the place where you need to go to resolve the issue. Don't ignore all this other cruft. And that's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to do that, but I don't think everybody on discourse is super, people wander into discourse like, oh, because everybody's very encouraging and welcoming. Just come to the discourse, post your question on discourse. And then somebody responds on discourse that has like 15 years of experience. And it's like, well, it's SSA values and it's the
Yeah.
phi elimination. And yeah. And that was the thing that I was thinking would be helpful, useful, pleasant. Um, and discourse wouldn't be a horrible idea. I just don't know. I don't know.
Like
I don't
advertising
know
it
if
in
I'm.
Discord could be too, but Discord it like disappears pretty quickly. Um,
Yes, that's correct. We'd have to be like that guy that posts weekly about the newsletter.
oh, or we could get into his newsletter. Like we could be like,
Oh,
okay,
that's
sign up,
true.
put a sign up form in the newsletter. Because
Oh,
he
that's
was
true.
like
Actually.
he found my stuff. Like he found my tutorials and he found my like random stuff and just put it in the newsletter. Didn't ask me about it. And I was like, oh, okay, I get a bunch of MLIR newbies now coming to my blog to read tutorials and uh, yeah. So
That's
like
not a bad
people look
idea,
at the
actually.
newsletter. Okay, so okay, we'll try and get something in the newsletter. We'll put something in Discord. We'll put something on Discourse. And like we could maybe I mean we could just make this call open to anybody, right? And then like try to moderate it when people join and like mute people and stuff. And then
Is that
or
gonna
we
be
could have
is
people
that
sign up.
is that's funny? I didn't even think that we'd get like scrotum bombed or something, but it's
I
totally
mean,
possible.
so I have my HEIR meeting every week. The calendar invite is public, the open to anyone, and no one has ever joined who has been, oh hey.
Wait,
This is
what
my
was that? Somebody's
this is my
somebody's
old
here?
coworker. Yeah, or my old coworker. They worked with me on supply chain
I don't
optimization at
see it.
Google.
I
Can
don't see
you?
anything.
Oh, sorry, you don't see the chat on the live stream. So on the live stream, I
No.
have us in our call, and then I have the chat window
Can you
showing up.
send me the link to the live stream?
Yeah. One second. Let's see. You might have. There we go. Uh, or this is my buddy Max, and now that I'm like a compiler guy, I'm like meeting all these people in the compiler community, and we decided to start a streaming thing every other week where we chat about compilers and get new people who want to know more about compilers interested in having some low pressure people to talk to.
So
Wait,
if this person
dropped into
if
my
this person can hear
private?
me,
Yeah, or can hear you. But
I'm saying hi, but I can't hear anybody.
you can't hear anybody?
No, I can only hear you.
Oh yeah, well they're not talking, they're just chatting on the chat.
Ah,
I don't know if you
oh,
can see the chat. Where's the,
oh, now I can.
does it say private?
Although there's a delay, right? I've just
There's a
dropped into your
delay.
private live.
Does it say private? It shouldn't say private. Stream settings.
I don't think it is because I'm able to see it, and you and I are not like.
Yeah, I think it's not private. But anyway. Uh, oh, there you are. Okay. It's intimate. It's not private.
Yeah.
We're having an intimate conversation
You know.
about compilers.
Yeah.
It's always good to be intimate with your compiler.
Yeah. Oh, his private is in.
In quotes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's in quotes. It's in quotes. There we go.
You did surprise me, and it's good to hear from you. Uh, but yeah, I guess so at the end of the stream, it just posts the video. It's like a pretty low res video. It just posts it on as like you can watch the replay or whatever. So far we've been talking about board games that I've made, PhD defenses and
Hmm.
publishing and stretching carpet. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
the Great
bouncing off
Flood
the
of
walls here.
2008.
But yeah, now what were we talking about before we got our
So
first viewer?
discourse.
Oh, how to get people in the who want to learn about compilers, chatting with us. Yeah. Um, so in the Discord newsletter, and then we could have an open call. I think we should have an open call, let people drop in, and then like maybe there's a setting where you can make it so that like people start off muted and the host has to unmute them in order to let them talk. I think you can do that. Um,
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I don't. Let's not let people share screen. I guess unless we know them or they've been vetted.
yeah.
That seems like an attack vector, but otherwise,
Yeah, or yeah, we could have some kind of screening process. But yeah, I like that idea. That'd be good.
a bouncer at the door.
Bouncer. Yeah. Okay, I'll figure this out later. But yeah, because so far, just working on our own projects is too churny.
Wait,
Yeah. Like if it was something where I knew what I was doing, then it would be like less obnoxious. But
maybe you
fumbling
do that.
around. Yeah, I know we could do that, but I don't know how interesting that would be either. Uh, I don't know. I've been curious about LLM plus compiler. Um, I don't
No,
know. I don't know
no,
of
yeah,
any
it's
LLM. Like it could be a compiler for LLMs or a LLM that helps you write compiler code.
there was a yeah there that's a thing. I mean, of course, it's a thing because it's like the lowest hanging fruit. Smash two ideas together. But I got an email, or at least it was forwarded to me uh, some months ago. Some guy here at the school was like, "We have an exciting project." This was actually right after ChatGPT got really big. He's like, "We have an exciting project about building a compiler stack that includes an LLM." And one of the guys on my committee, oh, sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of you, or I didn't realize that Or's shit. Foot him out. Yeah, I don't really believe in that. Anyways, somebody advertised that, and my advisor sent that to me, and I'm like, no, please keep me away from
Well, I'll tell you, here's something that is like a real thing that's happening is people are trying to use LLMs to convert broad swaths of C++ code to Rust equivalent code. And there's a couple open source projects that are doing this, and I know that some people at Google have a strong eye trained on these projects, but the idea is that like we've got so much old C++ code sitting around, and wouldn't it be great if we could get a jump start on converting the big critical parts over to Rust? But then like, first you have the LLM convert it, and then you have a loop where it runs a bunch of tests somehow to make sure that it satisfies all the old tests that it satisfied before, and then you have a human inspect it. But if it fails, then maybe you could turn that into like feedback to the LLM and keep going. And it was just like, okay, yeah, I could see why like a company with 100 million lines or a billion lines of C++ might want to do that. Um, but
that.
I don't
Sounds
know,
frightening though.
yeah, something about it
With
just
that
doesn't make
number,
me feel good at my core. And it's not
yeah,
it's not the like obviating my job part. It's the like it's
no,
the
no,
like don't it the whole point of using Rust is that you get more confidence in your results, but then like saying I'm going to use an
yeah,
LLM to generate Rust code is like obliterating 90% of that confidence.
I think the thing about LLMs that frightens me is not that they're going to take over. People are like the Elon Musks of the world or something like, or whomever. It's that the end result is going to be just swaths and swaths of crap ass code that we
Yeah.
all live with. Like a lot of people already live with crap ass code because they use like they're like a secretary or something like that, and they have to use like SAP or
Mm-hmm.
something like that,
Yeah.
or whatever, or just some SaaS companies tools that the middle manager got sold on, and it's like they have to fight through this like really buggy user interface that like eats their homework every 3 or 4
Mm-hmm.
cycles or something like that, and that's just gonna get worse.
And not just
That's my
code,
real
right?
fear.
Like like it's going to show up in the software products, right? That use the crappy code, right? It's going to
Yeah.
make those products worse. But then it's also like they're already using it to spread election misinformation. Like, did you see
Oh yeah,
this
yeah,
thing
sure,
where
sure, sure.
yeah, like and it's just like I don't know. It's like it's kind of like it reminds me of the cryptocurrency stuff, right? Where it's like okay, we've been doing this for 15 years, not we, but the cryptocurrency
Yeah.
community has been claiming Bitcoin's going to replace dollars for 15 years, and the only use case we've figured out is like grifting people, right? Like it's like
Well,
dark web applications financing Korean military programs through hacking Ethereum,
shit.
you know,
What are those things called? The monkeys,
yeah, NFTs,
the trading cards. Yeah,
yeah,
NFTs. Yeah,
the bored ape, yeah, that all that bullshit, just like and like it's like those are the first and only applications we found, and I know LLMs are like a step away from that because like there are people who are like trying to use LLMs to like you know I guess fire all their animators so they can like make shitty movies that like have like worse but cheaper animations, right? Like there's a lot of people doing that, and that's like a step removed from like pure evil to just like whatever
garden variety capitalism.
garden variety yeah, garden variety
Yeah,
evil capitalism.
yeah,
But it's like I haven't like yeah, I don't know. It's like it seems like the only thing it's going to help us do is like raise the bar for the amount of volume we have to output and lower the bar for
yeah,
quality
yeah,
and just like make everyone more stressed out and fill the world with
yeah,
more information waste. That bothers me about
yeah.
it.
Or your friend Or is never coming back. That would be
No.
like no, no, I don't know. I'm just saying that he just like this was if this was the reaction that I got when I proposed an idea about something that I was interested in,
Yeah,
I would never come back.
yeah. Or goes by they, by the way. Yeah.
Oh,
Uh, yeah.
they
You,
they
you
they
can't you
will
can't you
they
can't
will never
tell
come back.
from the picture or the name, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I worked with them for many years. We did we saved Google a lot of money, and it was kind of like a chaotic,
Do you feel
particularly
good
high
about that?
stress for Or because they were a PM, and so like they were on the front lines of shit
Mm,
going wrong all the time, and I was the software engineer who was like scraping together things that could hopefully make their job easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
God, that just feels. It's funny. You were talking about earlier about like some people don't want to graduate; they want the freedom to work on problems. Maybe sometimes I do have this dread about what is really the next stage of this like career trajectory going to look like. Because is it? And I'm like, is it possible that it's actually going to be even more stressful?
Oh, we got our first question.
It is. It's
Wait, we got our first question. What do compiler people wish more Swedes knew about compilers? That is an interesting question.
I have some thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I was like responding to something on Reddit, and some this was in one of those like I'm a student. I don't usually do this. I'm not like some like altruistic beacon of hope to the undergrads of the world or something like that. But I just noticed some kind of thing about compilers, and somebody was asking about what happens when you do an assignment to like, or you like do an assignment like y=5, and then you assign to x, just some garden variety thing. And then the first answer was, well, the compiler does this, the compiler does that, the compiler does this, and I just throwaway commented, responded to that person saying, you should qualify with some compiler or most compilers or
Mm-hmm.
GCC.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody responded, well, that just muddies the waters. And I'm like, no, the goal here that I had in mind was people should understand that a compiler is not like the laws of physics, that it's a set of design decisions that somebody made prior to you showing up on the game, and it's like mutable. Like you can disagree with that. You're not going to necessarily be able to change because it's not in the standard. The thing that I said was I don't think register versus heap versus stack allocation
Mm-hmm.
when you assign from y to x is in the C++ standard.
No, not at all.
That's what does the compiler do to make that beautiful for whatever hardware it's generating code for? That was some decision that some engineer made, and it's not like the law of God that it has to be this way, and you
Mm-hmm.
could change it. You could decide you don't agree with that. You can go and contribute and like submit a PR that says do this instead if you have a good reason, right? So that's one thing I was like thinking is important for a starting student, being like, these aren't the 10 commandments passed down from time before law, like lost
Mm-hmm.
time before whatever. It's like a set of design decisions that were consensually agreed upon to some extent by some group of people. And, you might have a better idea. You can go question those design decisions. You can misunderstand them because they were goofy and poorly explained and poorly articulated, this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
I think I think branching off of something you said about how it like not in the standard, I think one thing I didn't realize before I started working on compilers was the degree to which the compiler behavior influences the standard. Um, like I've seen like a lot of like deep down in the rabbit holes of people discussing compilers and standards basically say like the C++ standard has this very bizarre feature. Um, like okay, so I'll give you one example. If code is so infinite loops, right? An infinite loop
yeah,
in C++ is undefined behavior according to the C++ standard. And things that are undefined behavior, the compiler is allowed to do whatever it wants with it. And so if you have an infinite loop that prints whatever, hello world over and over again, the compiler is allowed to not run that loop at all. It can just delete it entirely because it's undefined behavior. It can do whatever it wants. And the
sure.
reason it's
Yeah,
undefined behavior is because the compiler engineers working on GCC and LLVM wanted to basically make their job easier and not have to deal with things that they
sure.
could detect are infinite loops. And so I just like didn't understand that relationship between like they basically said like, okay, I'm gonna make my compiler do something that's not in the standard. And then when we talk
Yeah,
about updating the standard, I'm gonna use the fact that this compiler that's
yeah.
popular does this as justification for why it should be part of the standard. And it's this like
It's like,
very bizarre like self-fulfilling prophecy or like kind of a backhanded way of like but it also tells me
sure.
that like the standard is in a lot of senses designed to make compiler engineers jobs easier, not necessarily for
Of course.
the quality of the user experience in
It's like
themselves.
regulatory capture. It's like regulatory capture. It's like the EPA exists and you have all these organizations that somehow, so I might be like actually confusing let me look that up real quick because I think I understand regulatory capture as an idea. Yeah, right. The economic theory that regulatory agencies may be dominated by the interests that they regulate, not by public interest. It's
Hmm.
like you're a company that is supposed to be governed by by the EPA or whatever, and somehow you do this exact same thing where you like lobby. Well, we've been doing this for 100 years. We've been dumping oil in the Potomac, and we should continue to be able to dump oil in the Potomac because it improves the economy and the citizens of whatever the fuck don't care or something. So that doesn't surprise me at all. The thing that I learned similarly along the same lines, like kind of changed my perspective on standards, was when I was at LVM the last time, the meeting. I was talking to this guy and he was like basically pissed off about it. This guy who works on Clang Interpreter. He was talking about how the people that contribute to the standard essentially leave like companies like TI,
Hmm.
right? There's a bunch of old school kind of compiler manufacturer companies that have members like Intel or whatever that sit on
Hmm.
the standards committees and have carve outs for themselves. They're
Mm.
like they like inject things into the standard. I don't remember what he was talking about. We were talking about we were talking about struct layout. We were talking about ABI and stuff like this. And he was like, well, the reason that such and such ABI thing is undefined is because some such and such company wanted some permissive thing in the standard for their crappy compiler or something like that. And I'm not talking smack about TI. Don't I don't want them to come sue me. I don't know anything about TI compilers. But that also doesn't surprise me.
Well, or ask another question. What does contributing to a compiler look like?
Yeah, and I kind of just, because we're talking and I'm multi-threading over here, I send him a link to a PR that I have open that'll probably never get merged.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it feels like normal software development, but there's a lot of other stuff happening at the same time. At least in the MLIR world, there's like whatever hundreds of commits going in a day, and then
yeah,
I feel like there's yeah, I don't know. It's I haven't done any like meaningful feature work in MLIR upstream. Like I've like done small patches and improvements on things that I've run into and that haven't really taken much justification. But I feel like there's a lot of like large overarching design discussions that happen with
yeah,
RFCs and with like,
yeah,
100 comments in a pull request
yeah,
asking for, like retweaking the design as it goes. And
yeah.
I feel like I haven't been deep in that very much to
It's
give a good answer
pretty,
to that question.
it's pretty tedious. Like I wouldn't call what I've done super core feature work, but the thing that you just described were like dozens and dozens of back and forth. There's this one guy in the community. His name is Rahul. So I did a bunch of Python work on the bindings, right, over the last year. And there's this one guy that has the most amazing ability to turn my spaghetti bullshit into like pasta primavera. Like at first I was a little bit frustrated, but I was never so frustrated that I gave up. But I started submitting these patches to the bindings and their integration and stuff like that. And he would always like laser in on just bullshit that I didn't intentionally, and I wasn't trying to be sloppy, but I just wasn't very good yet. And he would give me incredibly good uh suggestions, and a lot of them were, he told me later, like I talked to him on Discord, he's like, oh, I just had these ideas and I put them out there for you to try. I didn't know they would work. And it like transmogrified my bullshit features into good stuff. And it took rounds. It took sometimes 2-3 weeks to land. um so that's what
That
you were describing, like
that
multiple rounds back and
But that
forth.
is something I've noticed that like there is a wealth of expertise in the
Yeah,
compiler community. There's like so many people who know so much, and I feel like more so
yeah,
than any other project I've worked on, I've you know, like even when I was working on like linear solvers for like data center
yeah.
optimization. I would talk to the experts in the operations research group, and I would talk to the experts who designed the system I was working on. Like half the questions I asked, they'd be like, I don't know. Like, no idea. Like, I don't know how you should do this. I don't have any strong opinions. Just like try something. But I feel like in the
I
compiler community, maybe there's an overflowing cornucopia of opinions, but I feel like a lot of those opinions at least are informed in some sense from at least their own experience or I don't know. I've never actually I took a compilers class, but it was not nearly as deep as what you do in the MLIR world, but and that was also like 10 years ago. So I
I,
don't have
I
much experience myself. Like I haven't like done a PhD in compilers or anything. But and I've noticed I have a tendency to like overestimate how good other people are at things until I have mastered them. And then like years later, I will like look back and be like, oh, that person did not know this topic as well as I thought they did at the time. Like this
yeah,
happened to me
yeah,
like all throughout my math career. I would like idolize some like classmate who I was like,
yeah.
oh wow, this person's really smart. And then like after like I graduated or whatever, I'd be like, oh, that person like didn't know a lot of basics. Like
I feel like you just gave me a compliment and then took it back.
no, it's not you. I still think everybody I've interacted with in the MLR community knows much more about me than compilers.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm that person. There are definitely a lot of people that are very, very experienced, have had like years and years in the trenches. I was gonna say that possibly part of the reason that, so it depends, right? I mean, like you can go to some compiler group and they're just gluing stuff together from upstream and doing it poorly. And they're building a compiler, and so they're a compilers group. You could go to some place that is re-engineering some dimension, or like, I don't know, Mojo that threw out everything, including the baby with the bathwater. They don't use any
Yeah, kind of
dialects
starting
except
from
index.
scratch.
Yeah, to some extent. I was gonna say that possibly part of the reason that the the code or the work, the output is very high quality is because um, it's open source. But a lot of things are open source, but it's like, oh, this is a gateway to the fundamentals core of the computation engine machine that you're in fact using. And so like, oh, I can see X-ray all the way from AST entry, Clang, whatever, all the way to code gen for the ISA, right? So in the linear optimization community, well, I don't get to look at Gurobi. I don't know what's going on there,
I wish I
and
could.
I can make guesses. Exactly, right? That's exactly it. But you can't. But in LLVM, oh, how does that work? If I have enough patience, I can just take a look. I can even
I
put a
think there's
breakpoint.
like a big desire among programmers, right? Because every programmer has learned like 2 to 10 programming languages, right? And like it's kind of like the idea of a compiler and the idea of programming languages and the AST and doing optimizations on the AST is like such a familiar concept that I feel like that attracts a lot of people to think about that.
You think so?
Oh
You
yeah,
think so?
I feel like people love like programming language design and compiler design, like more so like than most other areas of computer science.
Then like ML or
I don't think people love
databases?
no people don't love ML like they love compilers. Like the like programming languages, people
Nah.
love programming languages.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's like the
How each
passion and
community,
the like people who love. I think there's certainly people who like really love ML and just like want to like do. They're like the theory people and the people who are like, I want to like understand why deep learning works, and like there's like a small crowd of people in there. But I feel like most of the people in the ML community are like, I want to hack something together for fame and profit.
yeah,
Whereas no one's gonna hack together programming languages for fame and profit, right? Like I guess unless you're Chris Latner. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but like
I don't think.
I feel like people love learning new programming languages, like programmers. I think for up to a certain point, right? I think I don't love learning new programming languages anymore. Rust did that a little bit for me. I got some of that joy back from learning a new language. But I feel like people really love like ramping up and then like I guess it's kind of like people who have a car and then they get interested in learning how their car works, right? Because they love driving their car around. Like I feel like that's kind of the same progression that people have with programming languages, just because it's accessible because it's so commonly used for them.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I too don't. When I guess when I was first starting out, it was like, oh, there's this wide uh, horizon of things to like pick and choose and play with. Like programming languages, 17,000 programming languages, and like front end, back end databases. It's like all dimensions are available for you to explore. And now I'm just old. I guess I'm just old and tired, and I'm like, please just leave me alone with my C++ and like my Python front end for scripting, and like maybe I'll learn Java. I do know I did write some stuff in Rust to figure it out. Like I wrote Raft consensus in Rust for this
Okay.
class that I TA every year. And so I get the idea, and and if somebody hires me to write Rust, I'll happily write Rust, and if somebody hires me to write COBOL, I'll happily write COBOL.
Yeah,
But I don't go like I'm not excited about Mojo. I don't
no,
I don't
but
care.
I'm also old too. But I feel like younger. Like I remember when I was a grad student teaching class. I taught programming classes to like first and second year students, and they were always asking me like, what programming languages should I learn if I want to get into
Yeah,
software? Like that's like the part that people
yeah,
latch onto first because it's the direct
yes,
interaction that you have with
yes,
software
yeah, yeah.
design. Um,
But I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. The general audience, the general community, I don't think they're super like some people are into programming language design and that kind of stuff. That's not actually like what it's funny or makes this comment and I responded to it. The reason I got into this is not because I wanted to like design programming languages or take them apart or like I had my own visions of well, for loop or while loop or map reduce, was because I watched this presentation of this guy, Andrei Alexandrescu, that he gave in 2013 that I was watching in 2015. He was an engineer at Facebook, where they rewrote the PHP compiler because the original Facebook was written in PHP and it was
Yep.
slow as
Mm-hmm.
absurdly slow, right? And now they have a highly performant jitting PHP compiler
Yep.
called Hip Hop VM. And he was giving a presentation on that, and he said this thing that I didn't understand that blew my mind, and now I understand it. And it still basically blows my mind, but not to the same extent. He made this comment, which is the same thing that Orr says, which is he said something like, 1% performance improvement in the compiler is worth 10 years of engineer pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I like literally this was the first year of my master's. I learned to program I didn't know how to program before I started my master's. And so I was sitting there watching this video and I was like, oh my God, the compiler is so slow that running the compiler takes so much energy for Facebook that's saving compile time.
Oh, even
I was
just
like,
compile time?
that's what I thought. That's what I thought
Oh,
he was
okay.
saying because I was a noob, which is possible because like it takes forever to compile LVM. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
But of
I
course,
think it is true Google, but maybe not to that extent. Like I know there's a lot of effort spent to reduce compile time at
sure,
Google just because Google's
sure.
constantly building everything.
Sure. But what that guy was talking about was the execution time,
Yeah,
runtime
yeah,
of
yeah.
the entire, and that's much more plausible today and still mind blowing that you can make a 1% performance improvement. He was talking about hash tables. He was talking about hash tables in PHP, which are like this weird kind of table slash array kind of thing, and that he said it. I can link it. I have that timestamp like burnt like somewhere in a notebook. um, that his best engineers spend almost all of their time on optimizing the struct layout of the implementation of that hash table, and a 1% savings is there. Like you can optimize the layout of the hash table implementation and get a 1% savings in performance, and that's 10 years of salary. And even at the time, I knew that it was a buttload of money for like because it's a Facebook engineer
Hmm.
salary times 10, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So not programming language aesthetics or like ideas about functional or types. I was like, that's money. That's real. The rubber meets the road kind of engineering. That's very important stuff. That's why I got into it, and it's true. It turns
Oh
out to
yeah,
be true.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think the not to rain on your parade, but I did notice because I kind of did similar stuff when I was working on data center supply chain optimization, right?
yeah,
It's like, oh, we
yeah.
find these, inefficiencies, we get rid of them, and we save Google how much money per year, whatever, some big
You
numbers.
don't get any of it.
No, we didn't get any. We got spot bonuses. We got regular spot bonuses,
Yeah,
which was nice, but like not anything in comparison to the amount of money we were saving Google. But
of
then,
course.
Google looks at those savings and turns around and says, scale more and faster, right? And so
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
yeah, which like kind of always deflated my balloon, where it's like, okay, like I remember asking like a it was my director who now I know is like not that high up enough to like for or listening, it was Matthias. I asked Matthias this question at some offsite, and I was like, oh, Matthias is like the highest ranking person that I will ever talk to. Even though since then I've talked to people who are yeah, one step below Urs is and I heard a rumor that Urs, I don't know if you know Urs, he was the SVP of like technical infrastructure at Google, and he's well known publicly, but he was like the guy that created all of Google's data centers, that like managed Borg, like he was under that umbrella was all Urs. And he at one point had his eye trained on one particular cost saving project I was working on, and so I was like very nervous about that. But I asked this guy, this director, I was like, okay, Google has an insatiable appetite for growth. At what point will we find a steady state and keep it at that steady state? Like, because
Never,
you can't grow
never.
but you can't grow forever. It's just not possible. At some point, you have to taper off. And I'll give you an example because the Google search index is, yeah, Google wrote the textbook on data center design, literally. But if you look at Google search index today, it is flat. It does not grow anymore because at some point in the mid 2000s or early 2010s, there was this race between Google and Microsoft could Bing index more websites? Could Google search index more websites? And it was just an arms race for more and more storage. And at some point, someone at Google realized, or they did some analysis, presumably, and they said, no one visits websites from the 90s anymore. There's no reason to index stuff that hasn't been updated for 20 years. So what they do now is they have basically a FIFO queue. Their indexer comes in the front, and any stuff that hasn't been visited or hasn't been refreshed just falls off the edge. And that's part of the reason why it's really hard to find old websites these days, that they just have fallen out of Google's search index. And so basically Google Search Index had the same problem. So we could just grow forever, index all the information, but at some point there's diminishing returns compared to the cost, and they just decided to have a steady state, and now it just sits at some it probably grows,
I
right?
bought.
But it's like basically they have an agreement that like they're not gonna just grow forever. And I think that the energy usage at Google has to at some point hit the same thing where it's like, okay, YouTube, like, because most of Google is cost of storage for YouTube videos and that sort of stuff because there's just so much video data, right? Like that, and like that sort of like binaries, right? Like not binaries, but just like static data like videos and images and all that stuff that Google has is like it's like the majority of its storage and data
Sure.
center costs. And like at some point, videos from the early 2000s when YouTube was young, no one watches them anymore, and it's not worth keeping around. And so at some point, they're probably going to do the same thing and start dropping old YouTube videos from
But
accounts
that,
that haven't
but
logged
that,
in and from channels that have died and things that never
but
got
that's
more
one
than
product, right?
100 views. Hmm?
But that's one product, right?
That's one product, but
There
like
we
it,
go. Exactly, exactly. That's exactly my point, right?
what do you mean?
As soon as you have like this is the engine of capitalism change. It's not like, so Google's not going to hit a steady state until we live in a managed economy and somebody dictates
Oh.
that we should stop growing it in order to like you're talking about inflation. You're talking about the same engine that drives inflation. And so like, yeah, one department, one org, one product might reach a steady state, but a company that reaches a steady state overall, and again, I'm not an economist. I've just read a smattering of thinking on this kind of stuff, and I haven't done a lot of very serious scholarly thinking myself on it. But it's like a company that reaches a steady state overall, it's like dead or something.
I see what you're saying, but like I'm talking about maybe not necessarily a steady state on revenue or a steady state on growth of the company or growth of the products, but a steady state on bottom line, which would be like even better from a perspective of investors because then your costs stay relatively flat and your revenue increases. But I mean, you gotta spend
Yeah,
money to
but
make money, right? Like, sure,
yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly
yeah.
the thing. Like I don't know how I don't know how many invest like the thing that you're describing. I think is basically like dividend returns. Like, oh, a company transitions from being a growing company to a steady state company, issues dividends, and like those are, again, I don't know jack shit, but like those are useful and valuable companies in people's portfolios, dividend issuing stocks. But the real money makers are the growth stocks, right?
Mm,
That's what everybody wants, like the 10Xers, the Nvidias, the whatever, because the returns are bajillion dollars rather than, oh, I get like my $75 check from every 1,000 shares of stock and I own 10 bajillion shares of stock. So that's good for me.
yeah.
So I think
I mean,
they all want
I
to
kind
grow.
of agree with you at least in the sense that Google's not gonna take it upon themselves to limit anything that they do, right? Like it's gonna
Yeah.
take some kind of external force to whether it's carbon tax or whatever that will make them rethink how they do that. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting because when I asked this director, he was like, "I have never thought of this before." It's like, okay.
That's funny. I mean, that's funny that somebody will just like be like, I
Uh,
never thought
yeah,
about it.
they're like this is not a concept that I've like, and that's like the Google mentality, right? Like just throw more compute at it and you'll solve the
Yeah.
problem. Uh, anyway, I feel like the quality of this live stream has gone up dramatically since
Yes.
Ora started asking questions.
Well,
So
then
thank
or
you.
should be on. We should recurring guest, right? Storage is infinite, right?
Yeah.
Just keep inventing other new dimensions to store the bytes in. Hey, I'm gonna jump off here and
All
have
right.
dinner with wifey.
Sure. Yeah, we'll call it quits. But I think in 2 weeks I will be at a conference. So I don't think I'll be able to do this then. Maybe we could do in 3 weeks.
Sure.
Okay.
3 weeks. What is 3 weeks? 3 weeks. Yeah, I think I will we'll have to.
Last
I
week of
don't
March.
know.
Oh, it might be too close to your
Yeah.
dissertation
No,
defense.
no, 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 no,
Okay.
no. Bro. If I'm not ready 1 week before, send help.
All right. Maybe the night before we can do compilers and whiskey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good. Cool, man.
All right.
All right.
See
Thanks
ya.
for coming over.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya.